ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video here on DNN TV, and today this is going to be a little bit of a different type of video. Now, normally, as you would see here, this would be the scene for the DNN show. However, we are going to be taking a little bit of a turn and doing more sports kind of themed videos is what I'm going to be doing here on DNN TV, or how I'm going to be calling it here from now on, DN TV. So as you see here throughout the next couple of weeks, possibly, there's going to be some slight changes. There's some major changes potentially as well. Things in the works, things changing. So as of today, I'm going to be starting to do a weekly video on Wednesdays, where ahead of the week, as of right now, during the NFL season until the end, I'm going to be doing a video every Wednesday talking about my picks for who I think is going to win throughout the week. And I'm going to be also talking about the top performers by position, kind of fantasy kind of thing. Excuse me. And who I think is going to be the top performers that week, prospectively by position. So yeah. So I'm going to get right into it and start out with week 1. Obviously starts as of recording this is tomorrow. As of posting this, it should be tomorrow. So I'm going to start out with Thursday night is the Ravens versus the Chiefs. And I am picking the Chiefs to win, especially heading off of a Super Bowl win. I just think, especially this year, now it'll be a little different considering that Marquise Brown is injured. Recent signing they did this year in the offseason. Xavier Worthy, I feel like, is going to be an interesting offensive weapon for Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, Travis Kelce is going to be still his big target. But I hope to see that Xavier Worthy gets some good involvement into the offense if they feel like he's ready, at least until Marquise Brown comes in, because then that's going to be a really bit of a tough offense to beat once Mahomes gets comfortable with both Xavier Worthy, Marquise Brown, and then continues his chemistry with Travis Kelce. But I do feel like Kansas City is going to take this one. On Friday, Packers versus the Eagles. Now, the Packers are an okay team so far. They had a decent season this last year, beating Dallas in the wild card round, sneaking into the playoffs as the 7th seed, I think is what it is. However, the Eagles are a better team compared to the Packers, so I am going to pick the Eagles on this one to win in Brazil, or I think the town's called Sao Paulo. But the Eagles are going to win this one, even with Jordan Love signing his ridiculously huge deal for whatever reason. He has one decent season, and then they already put him as one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league, I think, is what's really, in my opinion, is really ridiculous, because I don't think he really needed that much money, but that's just me. But however, I do think the Eagles are going to win this one. Then we move on to Sunday, the Panthers versus the Saints. Now, the Panthers finished their season last year at 2-15. So I feel like they're going to improve a little bit this year, but they have a long ways to go before they're a very competitive team, I feel like. And the Saints aren't much better. But with Derek Carr at quarterback compared to Bryce Young, I would choose Derek Carr typically. And however, losing Josh Jacobs in the offseason this year, and excuse me if you can hear if I kind of sound a little weird. My nose is kind of stuffed up. But we're pushing through it. Having Garden. Oh, I was thinking of the Raiders losing Derek Carr or losing Josh Jacobs. The Raiders shit. Anyway, the Saints having Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave. I feel like Chris Olave is in for a good season. And having Derek Carr at quarterback. I feel like this. I'm gonna pick the Saints to win this one. Considering, like I said, the Panthers aren't any good or aren't good this year, and I feel like they've got a long way to go before they're good. And the Saints are just, I feel like they're just a little bit better than them. I mean, especially when you talk about having a guy like Derek Carr at quarterback, Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, like the names that I said. They're not there to being a competitive team, and they feel like they are on the lower end as well with the Panthers, but I feel like they are slightly better than the Panthers. So I'm going to choose the Saints to win this one. Next, we have the Vikings and Giants. Now, having J.J. McCarthy out for the season with his elbow or shoulder injury, I think it was, having surgery on his injury to repair it for his long-term benefit is a good sight. I don't know how really he got injured, considering I don't think he got hit very often. So now that they have to start Sam Darnold, the team's kind of going to take a little bit of a hit, especially considering who knows how much of a what's the word? Penalty, I suppose you could say. How many games that Jordan Addison's gonna have to sit out with his whole stuff going on. But at least you give a guy like Sam Darnold, Justin Jefferson at least. I feel like the Vikings are going to win this one. At least for now. I think that can't count on the Vikings more often than not. If they were starting J.J. McCarthy, I would say definitely the Vikings are going to win this one. But questionably right now, I'm going to say the Vikings are going to win this one. Now, obviously, my picks after this is our final. That's it. But I'm going to questionably say the Vikings are going to win this one, especially because I think the Giants have... They have... Oh, what's his name? It's going to drive me nuts. Daniel Jones. So Daniel Jones. I don't think... Daniel Jones isn't a great quarterback, but he's not a terrible quarterback either. But I think the Giants have more problems than they do good things going on, aside from their running back that looked really good this year in the preseason. But I just don't think they have enough against the Vikings. I feel like the Giants are going to be another one of those teams where they're going to be on the... They're going to be I'm going to say they're going to be on the more competitive side of the bottom half of the teams, if you know what I mean. I feel like they're going to be right in between, like being like mid-tier to high-low tier. But I don't feel like they're going to win against the Vikings. If I think the Vikings are going to come in, Justin Jefferson's going to hit a big game, and they are going to be the Vikings. Next up, we have the Patriots versus the Bengals. Now, the Patriots still after trading Mac Jones, they have still a big question at quarterback. Releasing Juju Smith-Schuster was another thing. Juju Smith has not been the same wide receiver he used to be with the Pittsburgh, which ultimately Kansas City picked up Juju Smith. But the Patriots have a big question at quarterback, especially because I think they're starting Jacoby Brissett over Drake May, which a lot of the Patriots fans want to see Drake May start. I think if that's the name that I'm thinking of. Oh. Yeah. So they have Jacoby Brissett starting over Drake May, which I feel like most of the Patriots fans want to see Drake May start and play because he did show a lot of confidence, especially heading into his rookie season. However, I don't think the Patriots now, as they sit right now with Jacoby Brissett, are going to be able to contend very well with the team like the Bengals with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins right now. Losing Joe Mixon is a little bit of a hit on the Bengals, though. But even still, I feel like the Patriots just don't have it against the Bengals. They could have it against other teams, and depending on what they do with their quarterback situation, whether they eventually choose to go with Drake May after a while, or whether they keep Jacoby Brissett in through the season, I don't think they're going to take it. I don't think they're going to contend with the Bengals when Cincinnati's at home. So the Bengals are going to win that one. Next, we have the Steelers versus the Falcons. Now, this one I kind of go back and forth, obviously, because if you know me, I'm a Steelers fan. With how questionable the offensive line looked in the preseason for Pittsburgh, obviously it's also the preseason, so you can't really... Most teams don't really pull out a good chunk of their... most teams don't pull out a good chunk of their offensive playbook or defensive playbook for that matter in the preseason, because you really want to take a look at your bench players and see if you got potential, people that play good, people that are trying to fight for a starting spot. And obviously Pittsburgh went winless in the preseason, which I'm not too worried about. Because, especially because last year when Kenny Pickett looked really good in the preseason and just did not perform very well in the regular season. So I'm not going to hold the preseason against Pittsburgh too much, and I'm trying not to be biased here. I think Arthur Smith is going to put Pittsburgh in the right direction for their offense. Eventually, I'm going to say that Justin Fields could possibly take over for Russell Wilson, depending on how Russell Wilson plays. But in the end, Russell Wilson is Russell Wilson, so I'm sure he's going to make things happen in a sense for Pittsburgh. And I foresee the Steelers defense really, obviously, as they always do, stepping up, especially now that Joey Porter Jr. is in his second season and he played really well last season. You bring in a guy like Dante Jackson. Patrick Queen, Peyton Wilson's going to be eventually he's going to be a big dude. on the Steelers defense. You keep Minkah Fitzpatrick. Cam Sutton came back to the Pittsburgh. However, I think he does face a suspension for a couple games. Cameron Hayward just got his contract extended. But I look for Pittsburgh to be really solid defensive-wise this season, more than they have. Since picking up a guy like Peyton Wilson, bringing in a guy like Patrick Queen, which he seems like one of those guys that is meant to be a Steeler, in my opinion. Because from what he says that he looks like he belongs. And hopefully with signing Peyton Wilson and Patrick Queen, obviously, Cole Holcomb's not going to be... I don't think Cole Holcomb will play this year, which really sucks. But hopefully they can... Because the middle linebacker position, since Ryan Shazier got hurt many years ago, they've been searching and searching and searching for a middle linebacker that could hold down the middle linebacker spot and play really well, which they tried with Devin Bush, trading up and picking him, and ultimately that fell apart. I think had Devin Bush not had his injury he had, that he could have been okay. He could have been good, but he wouldn't have been great like Ryan Shazier would have been. But they are constantly searching for that middle linebacker that they need. Hopefully somebody like Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson are going to be one of two of those guys that could be that. TJ Watt's going to have a monster game or a monster year this year. So is Alex Highsmith. And there's just so many guys on that defense that I think the defense for Pittsburgh is going to somewhat... they're going to keep the game close as they usually do. And hopefully the offense can take on... But hopefully the offense can get things going and they can score. Because I'm gonna trust my instinct and go with the Steelers this time against the Falcons, even though the Falcons looked really stacked. However, it's going to be pretty much the same thing on both offenses for the Falcons and Steelers. I feel like both offenses are going to have to work through some things because they have two starting quarterbacks that are playing for their first time on a new team. So they're going to have two offenses that are going to try to start working through things and getting chemistry going. But I feel like just for the sake of the fact that the Steelers defense is tougher, as I think, I feel like the Steelers are going to be the Falcons, but I look for the Falcons to be a really good team once Kirk Cousins gets going with the Falcons. Next, we have the Texans and the Colts. Now, I feel like the Colts are going to be good with Anthony Richardson, but kind of rounding out, I suppose you could say, a wide receiver room with Nico Collins and Tank Dell. Then you add Stephon Diggs to a wide receiver room like that for CJ Stroud, and picking up Joe Mixon in the offseason, I feel like is going to be a really, really dangerous offense, especially because Nico Collins and Tank Dell have already gotten that chemistry going with CJ Stroud. And you bring in a guy like Joe Mixon, where, yes, he's been hurt a couple times. He's been struggling, but I feel like under a new scenery that's not Cincinnati, I feel like he could do really good depending on how their offensive line runs. And CJ Stroud's a bit of a mobile quarterback as well, so you really got to counter. You have too many guys on that team, I think, that could blow up at any point, that they're going to be a dangerous team to look out for. And like I said in my last video on the DNN show, I see the Texans making it to the AFC Championship and giving Kansas City a run for their money this year, if not next year. And the Colts, like I said, the Colts are getting close to being a good team. I feel like a good contending team. Not a deep playoff contending team, but a contending team nonetheless with Anthony Richardson. I do feel like the Texans are going to take this one just because the Texans are the Texans at this point. I feel like they're going to be really good as long as CJ Stroud stays healthy and he continues his progression from last year. Next up, we got the Cardinals and the Bills. Now, this is an interesting one for the Bills losing Stefon Diggs. I feel like the Bills aren't going to be as good as they were, regardless of how Josh Allen plays. Because losing a guy like Stefon Diggs, yes, he had a little bit of a less productive year last year, but I still feel like the Bills aren't going to be as good as what they were, let alone barely sneaking into the playoffs until the last week of the season last year. I think the Cardinals are going to take this one. Even losing Marquise Brown and Marquise Brown going to Kansas City. I think the Cardinals are going to take this one because I think the Bills are going to struggle this year, I think, until they find somebody that they really, really can trust at wide receiver. So the Cardinals are going to take this one. Next, we have the Titans versus the Bears. Now, a lot of people are going to be hyped about this game considering Caleb Williams is playing his first regular season NFL game. Rookie or not. Well, not rookie or not because he's a rookie. Being at Chicago, rookie quarterback that everybody's already saying is going to be a extremely good quarterback. I feel like it's going to get to his head a little bit. Now the Titans losing Derrick Henry is a huge hit to Tennessee as well. But I think the Titans are going to come into Chicago and win this one, considering the fact that I think that we are already putting a lot of hype on Caleb Williams, more than we really should, until he starts playing. I mean, you got to give the guy, you got to give the guy a chance to learn the NFL and learn fully and start playing and get some experience. Start playing these games this year before you really claim him as a great quarterback. But I don't think the Bears are going to win this week. I feel like the Titans are going to take this one. They're going to sneak that win out. But I look for the Bears to be a good team this year. But that's just my opinion. Next, we have the Jaguars versus the Dolphins. I have the Dolphins winning. Just for the sake of Tyreek Hill's going to go crazy this year. So is Tua Tagovailoa. Yeah, and the Dolphins are just a little bit better of a team. Just a better team overall than the Jaguars right now. The Jaguars got a lot of issues that I think that they need to solve first. Next, we have the Broncos versus the Seahawks. Now, I look forward to Bo Nix possibly being a pretty good quarterback for the Broncos. He looked good in the preseason. Now, obviously, you can't trust the preseason as much as you can just flat regular games in the regular season. But I think that the Broncos are going to win this one. I don't see Bo Nix having an ecstatically exciting game. I can't speak English. I don't see Bo Nix having an overly exciting game. That's the words. I think he'll have a solid game. He'll have a decent game. Maybe he'll throw like one or two picks. But the Seahawks are one of those kind of kind of low mid-tier teams that Geno Smith is not going to take them to a good solid playoff run in his time, I feel like. But so I think the Broncos are going to win this one over the Seahawks. Next, you got the Raiders and the Chargers. The Raiders are kind of losing Josh Jacobs, still trying to find their guy after they let Derek Carr walk. I don't think the Raiders are in any shape right now to be contending for anything really, a playoff spot, I should say. But the Chargers are closer to that spot than the Raiders, so I think the Chargers are going to win this one. Because the Raiders got a long way to go before they start being a very, very good team again, I think. Bad. So the Chargers are going to go are at home, and I think they're going to win against the Raiders. Next, we have the Cowboys versus the Browns. Now, yes, the Browns have Deshaun Watson. I think they're going to be a good team, okay to good team. But right now, I think with CeeDee Lamb getting his contract, I think he's going to show out. And I think the Cowboys are going to win right now. Playoff wise, we will be saying a different story. But right now, I think the Cowboys are just a better team than the Browns. The Cowboys are going to take this win. Next, this one that's an interesting one. The Commanders versus the Bucks. Now, yes, the Bucks were a okay team last year. I think they snuck into the playoffs last year, if I'm not mistaken. And the Commanders have a long way to go before they're a good team. They should start Jaden Daniels, but I don't think they're going to, if I remember right. Yes, yes, Jaden Daniels is starting for the Commanders. I forgot about that. Um, I thought Sam Howell was starting for some reason in my head. But so Jaden Daniels is the starting quarterback, and I think Jaden Daniels could give the Commanders a good potentially good future. Um, but I don't feel like the Bucks are going to be as good as they could be. So I think the Commanders are going to win this one. I think Jaden Daniels Jaden Daniels is going to have a good game. He's not going to have an exciting game, but I think he's going to have a pretty good game. So the Commanders are going to go into Tampa Bay, and I think they're going to win this week. Wow, I can't speak English. Next we have the Rams versus the Lions. Now the Rams were good for that one championship they won. I don't think they have a shot at doing it again. Even though they have Puka Nacua, whatever the hell his name is. Matthew Stafford isn't as good as he used to be in Detroit. I think they also found a pretty good wide receiver that was showing out in the preseason this year as well. But the Lions are going to win this one, and I see them. If you haven't seen the DNN show video that I just recently made, go check it out. I'll put the link in the description, but I think the Lions are going to make the NFC Championship this year. And I think they are definitely going to win this one, I feel like, week 1. And I think the Lions are going to be a really good team this year. Next, to round out week 1, Monday Night Football, the Jets versus the 49ers. Now, this one I feel like is going to be a little bit of an upset. The Jets are going to beat the 49ers. Now, as long as Aaron Rodgers can stay healthy this year longer than he did last year, he's coming off that injury. they boosted the offensive line, and I can see Garrett Wilson having a decent year this year with a better quarterback like Aaron Rodgers. Brees Hall is the same way. I can see him having a better season this year. But honestly, this year, the 49ers, this is their last shot to win. This year, if not next year, is pretty much their last shot to win the Super Bowl before they're screwed for the next couple of years, because they've got a lot of people coming up that need a contract, I feel like. And especially when it comes time to pay Brock Purdy, he's going to need an insane amount of money. George Kittle's the same way. Deebo Samuel's the same way. Fred Warner's the same way. They just re-signed Trent Williams. But you got way too many guys on that team that are going to start needing money pretty soon that are going to need a lot of money. So you can't pay everybody. So they're going to have to give some people large contracts up, whatever it may be. But this is their last year to be good, and I do not think they will this year. I think they will be a very good, solid team. They were going to be a very deep playoff run team, but they are not going to make it to the Super Bowl again this year. Just real quick, another little thing that I want to do here is the top 5. Predicting the top 5 kind of fantasy scores / just top 5 performers per position. At quarterback, I have Jalen Hurts at number 1. When he plays the Packers in Brazil, I think he's going to have a really good game this week. And I think he's going to round it out. Next at number 2, I have Patrick Mahomes, obviously, because I don't think he's going to have as good of a game as Jalen Hurts is, obviously, because Green Bay doesn't have as good of a solid defense as Baltimore does when Patrick Mahomes faces Baltimore. But Mahomes is going to have a really good game nonetheless. So I've got him at number 2. Number 3, I have Josh Allen. Now, like I said, losing Stephon Diggs is going to kind of be a hit for them. However, I think he's still going to have a good game, but I don't feel like they're going to win. But yeah. So Josh Allen rounds out number 3. Number 4, I have CJ Stroud. Now, I kind of went back and forth to whether or not I wanted CJ Stroud to be at 3 for like top 5 fantasy scores. Whether I wanted CJ Stroud to be at number 3 or number 4, but ultimately I chose number 4. Because Houston takes on the Colts and the Bills take on the Cardinals. So this is why, just defensive wise, I think the Colts were if I'm not mistaken, they were at least a top 10 team defensive wise, fantasy points wise. Because I don't think the Cardinals have that good of a defense, and I think the Colts have a slightly better defense. So that's why I have Josh Allen at number 3 and CJ Stroud at number 4. Number 5, I have Lamar Jackson. Now, a lot of you would probably say that I probably should have had Lamar Jackson higher, but however, I don't think he's going to have... He's going to have a top 5 performance against Kansas City, but I don't think like they're going to win. I think the Kansas City defense is going to give him problems on Thursday, and the fact that they're going to lose. So that rounds out my top 5 quarterbacks. Top 5 fantasy scorers at quarterback. Now, running back, I have Christian McCaffrey, obviously, at number 1. Yes, he's coming off of an injury, but I feel like he's going to be one of the top running backs in the league week 1. Bijan Robinson at number 2. Josh Jacobs at number 3, considering he is now with Green Bay. Yes, I have them losing. next year, obviously I have them losing against the Eagles, but I feel like now that Josh Jacobs is on a different team that's not the Raiders, I feel like he's going to be really good. Number 4, I have Jonathan Taylor, and number 5, I have Jahmyr Gibbs. Especially because, like I said, Detroit's going to be a really good team this year. Wide receiver, at number 1, I have Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is just Tyreek Hill. I mean, that's all I can say about him. Especially having a quarterback like Tua. He's going to be really good. Number 2, I have Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like I said, Detroit's going to be really good this year, and I feel like St. Brown's going to explode this year. Number 3, A.J. Brown, because I have, like I said, I have the Eagles beating the Packers, so I think Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown are going to have a field day against Green Bay's defense in Brazil. Number 4, Justin Jefferson. I have Justin Jefferson at number 4, considering even with a quarterback like Sam Darnold, I feel like Sam Darnold's going to tend to lead to some of his best wide receivers that are available on the roster, and Justin Jefferson is that number 1 wide receiver, so I feel like he's going to look to start throwing to him more this week, and so I think Justin Jefferson's going to have a good game, but he's not going to have one of the best games. At number 5, Garrett Wilson. Now, like I said, Garrett Wilson I feel like is going to be really good as long as Aaron Rodgers stays healthy and doesn't repeat last year, because I feel like if he repeats last year, he just needs to retire. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If Aaron Rodgers does the same thing he did last year in the last 4 plays, I'd retire myself if that were me, personally. I mean, you played long enough, and if you go out for the season with another injury like that after 4 plays, I'd just be like, no, I'm done. So next at tight end, obviously, I have Travis Kelce at number 1 because Patrick Mahomes is his quarterback. Travis Kelce is Patrick Mahomes' tight end. They're going to still be a good dynamic duo this year, and that's why Travis Kelce is going to show out against Baltimore. Sam Laporta, I have at number 2. I look for him to make some really good strides this year and improve. Number 3, I have Mark Andrews. Mainly because I feel like Lamar Jackson's gonna rely heavily on him against Kansas City. Number 4, I have George Kittle. Same way, I think San Francisco's gonna be a good deep playoff run team, but I don't think they're gonna make it to the Super Bowl again. But George Kittle's gonna show out again, and now this is interesting. Hate me or not, don't shoot the messenger, but I see Pat Freiermuth going off this week for the Steelers. Especially because when you got a guy like Russell Wilson, what's he going to do? He's going to look for his tight end. He's going to look for his top wide receiver, which is George Pickens. He's going to look for his tight end as well. I think now that the Steelers have a better quarterback room than they did last year, Pat Freiermuth is going to go off this year. He could be a really good sleeper to look for in fantasy this year. So I think Pat Freiermuth is going to go nuts, but he's not going to have a top 3 stat line for week 1, but he rounded out my top 5. Now, defensive wise, I have the 49ers at number 1. Considering, like I said, the 49ers still have their current pieces, but I feel like they're not going to make the Super Bowl this year. However, they're going to be a top-ranked defense this week. Number 2, I have the Ravens, surprisingly enough, because they were one of the top-ranked defenses last year. And they're going to be a good team. And they're going to give Mahomes and Kelce a fit. Cause them to have some problems, but I feel like Kansas City's going to win anyway. Now, number 3, shocking, but I think the Steelers' defense is going to perform top 3 when it comes to the defense, fantasy-wise, considering, like I said, they've got so many good pieces that they picked up this year on defense. I feel like the defense is going to show out more than they already have, and TJ Watt's going to be a monster this year. So they are at number 3. Number 4, I have the Eagles defense, considering they are facing the Packers, and the Packers offense is okay. But I feel like the Eagles defense is just going to be a little bit better than the Eagles offense or Packers offense. And number 5, defensive fantasy top performers, I have the Cowboys. Now, especially since the Cowboys face the Browns, that's why I don't have them over somebody like the Eagles, because the Browns offense, I feel like, could score quite a few points if the Cowboys defense isn't careful. But I feel like with the Cowboys winning, I feel like the defense is going to make enough stops, which is how they usually did it last year. They're going to be able to make enough stops this year on defense this week that they're going to round out the top 5. But that's going to do it for this one, ladies and gentlemen. My voice is about to go nuts. But thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on the bell notifications. And if you have made it this far, let me know down in the comments who you think's going to win and who you think's going to lose, and who you believe I chose wrong. I want to know. I don't know what you thought of my opinions. So, thank you for tuning in. Like I said, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, turn on the bell notifications. As I say here at DNN TV, stay classy, don't be trashy, and enjoy the rest of your day. Deuces!